Top 5 Notorious Serial Killers Whose Horrific Acts Gave Us the Chills. If there's a thing that true crime shows have taught us, it's that serial killers can blend among us in plain sight. They're not the obvious bad guy in a trench coat or the psychopath with wild hair who screams at everyone they meet. Instead, they come off as perfectly normal people with normal jobs and normal families. Until one day, they show up at your doorstep and try to lure you into their world of deviance and mayhem. Or they see you walking on the side of the road and think you could be their next victim. In fact, some of the most famous serial killers in history were actually quite good at keeping their evil deeds secret for years before anyone found out what they were really up to. Many made headlines for their horrifying crimes and got away with them for a long time before being caught. But who are these hideous people who terrorized their countries and became the subjects of psychiatric analysis, TV shows, true crime podcasts, and docu-series? Here are some of the worst serial killers who fooled everyone into thinking they were just the friendly guy next door. Before we start the video, make sure to hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell to never miss out on new videos every Monday. Thanks for the support. Now let's proceed. Number 1. John Wayne Gacy, also known as the Killer Clown, was an American serial killer who operated between 1972 and 1978. Gacy was born on March 17, 1942 in Chicago, Illinois. He gained notoriety for his double life as a respected businessman and a sadistic murderer. Gacy's criminal activities involved luring young boys and teenagers to his home under the pretense of offering them work or money. Once at his house, Gacy would torture his victims before murdering them. He then buried the bodies in the crawl space beneath his home or discarded them in a nearby river. The chilling aspect of Gacy's persona came from his alter ego as a clown named Pogo. He frequently performed at children's parties, fundraising events, and charitable organizations, often dressing up as a clown to entertain people. This dichotomy between his public image and his horrifying crimes earned him the nickname Killer Clown. Gacy's crimes went undetected for several years until 1978, when one of his victims managed to escape and inform the police. After a thorough investigation, authorities discovered the remains of numerous victims buried beneath Gacy's house. In total, he was convicted of the murders of 33 young men and boys, making him one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. In 1980, John Wayne Gacy was convicted and sentenced to death for his crimes. He spent years appealing his conviction, but all attempts were unsuccessful. On May 10, 1994, Gacy was executed by lethal injection at the Stateville Correctional Center in Crest Hill, Illinois. The case of John Wayne Gacy and his persona as the Killer Clown continues to captivate public interest and has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and films exploring the depths of his crimes and the psychological profile of a serial killer. Number 2. Gary Ridgway, also known as the Green River Killer, is an infamous American serial killer who was active during the 1980s and 1990s in Washington state. Ridgway was responsible for the murders of numerous women, primarily sex workers and runaways. His nickname, the Green River Killer, comes from the fact that many of his victims' bodies were found near the Green River in Washington. Ridgway's killing spree lasted for over 20 years, and he confessed to murdering 49 women. However, it is believed that the actual number of his victims may be much higher. He targeted vulnerable women, often picking them up along Pacific Highway South, an area known for prostitution. Law enforcement agencies launched a massive investigation to catch the Green River Killer. They faced numerous challenges due to the large number of victims and the killer's ability to avoid capture. Ridgway managed to elude authorities for many years, leading to frustration among investigators. In 2001, advancements in DNA technology led to a breakthrough in the case. Ridgway was arrested and charged with the murders of 4 women, based on DNA evidence found in the victims' remains. In a plea deal to avoid the death penalty, he confessed to a total of 48 murders and agreed to cooperate with authorities in locating the remains of his victims. Ridgway's cooperation led to the recovery of numerous bodies, and he provided information about his crimes and his victims. He was convicted of the murders and was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Gary Ridgway is currently serving his sentence at the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla, Washington. The case of the Green River Killer is one of the most notorious and complex serial killer investigations in American history. It highlighted the challenges faced by law enforcement agencies in identifying and apprehending serial killers, as well as the vulnerability of marginalized individuals targeted by such criminals. Number 3. Jeffrey Dahmer, born on May 21, 1960, was an American serial killer and sex offender. He gained notoriety in the 1990s for the murder, dismemberment, and cannibalism of 17 young men and boys. Dahmer's crimes took place between 1978 and 1991 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Dahmer's early life seemed relatively normal. However, he exhibited disturbing behavior at an early age, such as collecting dead animals and displaying an unhealthy fascination with dissecting them. As he grew older, his behavior escalated, and he developed a fixation on controlling and dominating his victims. His method or pattern of operation involved luring young men to his apartment under various pretenses. Once there, he drugged them, engaged in sexual acts, and then murdered them. Dahmer would dismember the bodies, often engaging in acts of necrophilia, and would keep body parts as trophies. Dahmer's crimes went undetected for years, partly due to his ability to manipulate others and his victims' marginalized status. However, in 1991, one of his intended victims managed to escape and alerted the police. When the police arrived at Dahmer's apartment, they discovered evidence of his gruesome crimes. During his trial in 1992, Dahmer pleaded guilty, but insane, to 15 counts of murder. He received 15 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Dahmer served his sentence at the Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. In November 1994, Dahmer was killed by a fellow inmate while serving his prison sentence. His case remains one of the most infamous and chilling examples of serial murder in American history, and it sparked significant debates about mental illness, criminal justice, and the nature of evil. Number 4. Andrei Chikatilo, also known as the Butcher of Rostov, was a Soviet serial killer who operated in the Rostov Oblast of the Russian SFSR and other nearby regions between 1978 and 1990. Chikatilo was born on October 16, 1936, in the Ukrainian SSR, and he grew up during the tumultuous years of World War II. Chikatilo's crimes involved SAing, mutilating, and killing at least 53 people, primarily young women and children. His victims often included runaways, prostitutes, and homeless individuals who were vulnerable and less likely to be missed. Chikatilo would approach his victims in public places, gain their trust, and then lead them to secluded areas where he would commit his heinous acts. The investigation into Chikatilo's crimes was plagued by numerous setbacks and failures. The Soviet authorities initially attributed the murders to a maniac rather than considering the possibility of a serial killer. The investigation intensified in the 1980s, and in 1990, Chikatilo was finally arrested. Chikatilo's trial began in 1992, and he was charged with 53 counts of murder. During the trial, he confessed to his crimes and described the gruesome details of his acts. Chikatilo's motives were believed to be rooted in sexual dysfunction, as he was unable to achieve sexual satisfaction through conventional means. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. On February 14, 1994, Andrei Chikatilo was executed by a single gunshot behind the right ear. His crimes left a lasting impact on the Soviet Union and the subsequent Russian Federation, leading to changes in criminal profiling and law enforcement practices in the country. Chikatilo's case serves as a chilling reminder of the capacity for human depravity and the importance of effective crime prevention and detection. Number 5. Ted Bundy, born Theodore Robert Bundy, November 24, 1946, January 24, 1989, was an American serial killer who gained notoriety in the 1970s for his gruesome crimes. Bundy was born in Burlington, Vermont, and grew up in a middle-class family. He was considered to be intelligent and charismatic, which allowed him to gain the trust of his victims. Bundy's crimes spanned several states in the United States, including Washington, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, and Florida. He targeted young women, often college students, and employed various tactics to lure them into his traps. Bundy would feign injuries or pose as an authority figure to gain their sympathy and trust. Once he had his victims in his control, Bundy would assault and murder them, often engaging in necro and other acts of brutality. He had a penchant for keeping souvenirs from his victims, such as their hair or other personal belongings. Bundy's reign of terror ended when he was arrested in 1978 and subsequently convicted for multiple murders. During his trial, he attracted significant media attention due to his good looks and charming demeanor, which created a macabre fascination with his case. Despite his conviction, Bundy continued to manipulate and play games with law enforcement and the public. He made multiple escapes from custody, including one from a Colorado jail and another from a courthouse in Aspen. However, he was recaptured each time. In 1989, Bundy was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison. Prior to his execution, he confessed to over 30 murders, although the exact number remains unknown. Bundy's case and his psychological profile have been extensively studied by criminal psychologists and criminologists, contributing to our understanding of serial killers and their motivations. Subscribe and click the notification bell to never miss out on new creepy and paranormal videos like this. Unveiling the unseen, embrace the shadows.